we're back for part 2.
The ultimate guide to street photography.
On sure.
With Professor
A1. After the unexpected success of our last video, which garnered over 1 million views, Professor Hines and I are back in New York City to bring you guys a full-blown, full-process video to street photography. From the gear to the POV shoot right down to the editing, nothing held back. This is the ultimate guide to street photography with Professor Hines.
55 can be a worthy choice every now and then.
Now, as you can probably tell from the length of this video that it is incredibly long, but it is also incredibly detailed. Not only do we follow the professor into the streets, but we'll also get to hear his thought process when it comes to getting the shot while being both on the field and in a separate interview.
I do not utilize burst. It's just a matter of timing it correctly.
And we'll also be addressing a lot of the frequently asked questions from the previous video, including his settings, his lens choices, and his overall approach to lighting and composition. We'll even be answering the most asked question in every single street photography video. Is it okay to take photos of strangers and publish them on social media? Now, because this video is so long, definitely utilize the time codes and the chapters available only here on YouTube. And feel free to come back to this video anytime you want, because this is gonna be here online for free for all of YouTube's entire lifetime. And this tutorial is made possible by our friends over at ZEISS Camera Lenses Americas, Adobe, and Artlist. So if you guys enjoy this video, be sure to let them know so we can make more like this in the future. So without further ado, let's get into the streets.
Chapter 1, Composition.
When it comes to street photography, there will be a lot of walking involved, and more often than not, you'll come across crickets for miles. But when you find a spot that's gold, and trust us, you'll know when it's good, you will be rewarded.
We're right outside the Oculus World Trade Center Transportation Hub. Right now I'm gonna take the A1 and start with the 85. So what I'm gonna do first is put my earbuds in, because I like listening to music.
Swear your love is ecstasy.
For the professor, a gold mine for him is a bustling crowd, and when he sees it, he'll crouch down and camp out for a while.
So what I'm doing now is capturing these people as they photograph Oculus. And I like getting the buildings, because that's why I shoot as low as I do. I want the buildings so that way people they don't look too short as you're shooting them. You know, if I shoot eye level into the ground, it doesn't work as well.
For framing my photos, I am someone who likes more distant shots. If you notice, a lot of my images aren't really close up to the people. There's always a foreground, I have my subject, and then there's something in the background. Why do I do that? Because it sort of messes with your eyes when you view the image, to where you notice the subject, but then you're also looking at everything else around.
So what I like to do is capture individuals along Oculus and then just take these solo shots. Sometimes I take people just sitting, or I'll take people as they're walking, and it's just so perfect. So look at this guy. He's walking up. I love it. I love it. So we're gonna just track him. Keep tracking him. Get him in the location that I want, and then I'll take the picture. And so as he does that, so that's kind of what I would get. Now, yeah, it's okay. Will I use it or will I not use it? That's to be determined. It's an okay photo. What don't I like about it? He's a little too close to the building. So like this. Now, I like this because they're actually kind of far away enough from the building to have that depth. And that's more what I want. So here I would kind of fluctuate as far as where I'm positioned to get certain compositions.
I'm always aperture priority. These cameras are so smart. I don't mind having it in an automatic feature. I trust my gear, and I think it does a really good job, so I don't mind that. You know, I'm just concerned about depth of field.
So this is nice. We're actually gonna get a horizontal of this. This is good.
In terms of photographing vertically or horizontally, the professor tries to get the same shot in both orientations. After all, with how many people are viewing everything on their phones now, the vertical orientation just looks much better on mobile devices. Taking a horizontal shot and performing a vertical crop is just not the same, and we would be sacrificing a lot of megapixels, resulting in a lower resolution photo.
Okay, I like those. So I might get another and do it horizontal. And you'll kind of see why I'm doing the horizontal here.
The professor rarely crops, and even when he does, it's a small enough crop to remove any distracting elements on the outer edge of the frame.
So let's see, what else can we get?
Now, when it comes to getting the shot, the professor has shared with me that the way that he does street photography is actually very uncomfortable as he crouches down to get the shot. We would be in this position for an hour at each location. However,
I think we got it.
we do it for a good reason.
Ooh, look at this. So that's them up close. Now let's pull back. That's the shot. The thing is, I'm trying not to have to worry about cropping, because if I crop, it makes that frame so much smaller, and I don't want to do that. So that's why I need it as clear as I possibly can. So now I can quickly get a vertical, because I have time. Okay, got the shot. So this is what I wanted. So this is the horizontal, and I wanted it as wide as I could. So to eliminate that guy on the side, I'm not losing as much, so it's okay. Whereas before, I still had too many people in the shot. But I think that's okay. I think we're good there. I know this is gonna affect me at old age for how I shoot, but I just like the lower shots. I don't like shooting from up here. I don't like shooting from the hip. So from here, if I were to take the same shot, I'm gonna show you the difference of why I don't shoot this high. Okay, so here's the difference. See, it's a little high, and I'm not catching as much of the building. Whereas in this, it's a little lower, so you don't see as much of the ground. See how it's just below that last third? Whereas here, I'm actually coming more on that third line. And I don't necessarily want that much space. I want to be high enough to where you can tell that this is the ground, but still be low enough to where that's not taking up a significant amount of the frame. Ooh, there's a lady taking a picture. I'm getting down again. This. And I missed her. I got down here for no reason, but at least it wasn't that long. Okay. I hope the camera picked that up. Jason Vong has just said live that he hates me.
I like photographing up towards people and framing people in the lower thirds. Lower thirds and aim upward. You know, Jason and I's knees are now damaged for life because we squatted so much.
I'm by your side.
Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next chapter.
Chapter 2, Lighting.
Lighting is key in all genres of photography, and street photography is no exception, especially since this particular genre relies only on natural lighting. For the professor, overcast and rainy days are his favorite types of weather to do street photography. The reason being, we get nice and even lighting at every location.
So see the light change? That's the difference. So just looking at the light on me, look at how harsh it is. Like I'm kind of having to squint just to look in the camera.
The ideal lighting scenario for me is overcast because that's when the light is softer.
So I would not catch anybody on this corner because this is just too harsh. And I lose my colors. So too much light, I lose those colors. And that's what I'm not trying to have happen. Gotta keep those colors.
It's a really nice day, living in the right space. Breathing your grace, got me feeling some kind of way.
While most people would do anything to avoid the rain, this particular element can turn any scene into a whole different playground for the professor, which we'll show you later in this video. For now, we want to show you the difference between shooting in harsh lighting and soft lighting and how both can affect your photos very differently.
If it's a day like now where, you know, it's more so overcast with a little bit of sun, oh, that's perfect. That is perfect. Here in New York, though, because there are so many tall buildings and many narrow streets, you can actually photograph during the middle of the day and not have to really worry too much about the harsh sunlight. the light hitting certain buildings would create like a softbox. Whereas other times you would just have such harsh light that it's like, no, I'm not gonna photograph anybody here because look at how the light is hitting their faces. That harsh light minimizes your colors.
Now, if you don't have the luxury of tall buildings being your natural light softboxes, sunset golden hour is almost always a guaranteed the best time to do street photography.
Our first evening of filming, the sunlight, oh gosh, it was rich.
We kind of treated that as a little bit of a warm-up.
That's the shot. That's what I want.
A common question we get asked is, does the professor listen to music during his street sessions? And the answer is yes. Music is a strong source of inspiration for him. Unfortunately, as much as he would have liked us to, we didn't have the budget to license 7 Rings by Ariana Grande. But luckily, we have many amazing music alternatives from one of our sponsors, Artlist.
Tell me that I'm all you want. Gotta be like no other. Touch and it turns to gold.
It was so gold. There was even one where I saw the lady coming into the frame and she had the longest ponytail. Reminded me of Ariana.
I'll just keep
I actually ran over to a spot that I wanted to frame that because I wanted the length of the railing with the light post. And then you just had this nice golden hue. Oh, that was so beautiful. The tricky thing with that though is that you have a limited window because shortly after that, we had no more sun. That's why I love those times, sunrise and sunset and overcast days. Ideal times to get the best shots.
If you've been enjoying some of the tracks throughout this guide and you produce your own videos, you should consider signing up for Artlist, a go-to music platform with unlimited licenses that's even cleared for commercial work usage. They have over 22,000 quality songs, 27,000 sound effects updated on a daily basis. They have 2 types of licenses, a personal one that covers only social media usage, and the unlimited plan where you can use any of their music for commercial work as well. To learn more about this, check out our link in the description box below.
Chapter 3. Trains, Low Light, and Motion.
If you've been following the professor on social media, then you'd know he has a strong passion for trains.
I love photographing the subway because I am a big advocate for transit.
Well, take the train.
I utilize transit in any city that has transit that I may go to. But then I love the underground because I grew up with trains. Thomas the Tank Engine was my guy.
He's very passionate about the transit system, and I think that passion truly shines through in a lot of his photos.
So that's a shot. Zoom in there. So I like doing that because it's just a different perspective. You know, shooting people. If I'm on the train, I like shooting people off the train, and then vice versa. And then I like transfer stops like this. So look at this. I like this curve.
And throughout all this, you will notice the professor sets up his shots first, or at least get an idea of what he wants first. After determining the lens choice, he then adjusts his settings accordingly, frames up his shots, and just wait till the moment happens. It's that simple, folks. And we would be riding the trains back and forth just to get to different stations to photograph at each spot. And during those rides, the professor would photograph inside the train, and then when it stops, he would step out for a brief moment to grab a couple of passengers entering and exiting before boarding back on.
14th Street, Union Square.
Man, just watching this guy work, he's just so fluid at it.
So kind of like what I look for with shooting subway stuff. I like using the handlebars. That's one where I capture those in like the foreground and then frame people in between them if I can. And, you know, like I'll shoot through the window like this, because I like this guy standing up. That actually makes a good shot. Oh, that's great. So I'll look for stuff like that.
So, how does the professor goes about capturing the subway stations, given the minimal lighting we have underground? Well, most photographers would say, just use a faster aperture lens. f1.8, f1.4, f1.2. But you know, there's another way too. A handy little trick called long exposure. Man, just look at those light twinkles on the train. Now you'll notice at times there isn't a particular person or train in focus, and that's because the professor is more focused on the motion. The train arriving and leaving, the passengers boarding and exiting. Long exposure is not just a technique that simply allows in more light into the sensor of the camera, but also a way to create the feeling of motion. Or should I say, emotion.
Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. That's the vibe emotion, loving is devotion. Live it up, live it up, live it up, sweet emotion.
So that's how you catch the motion. That there, that's it. I'm glad the train went slower so you can actually see. It makes a difference on the speed. So I was at just a little bit under a third of a second. But because the speed of the train was so slow, it's harder to capture that. Because for it to have enough distance, you need to be longer on how long that exposure is. So that's how come you can do this handheld. And so if we look, so see how this is, so see how the post and all of that is in focus? That's what we want. We want this to, because this is not moving. But if we look at the train is moving. And this is handheld. It's easier to do this with wider lenses. So the wider you go, the easier it is to do that. That's all it is. Not much to it. And that just shows you don't need a tripod to do long exposure.
Now the passengers, the conductors, are also incredibly important to the professor. So let's see how he goes about capturing the subjects individually.
We'll take this car.
Coming up later in this video, we'll show you how the professor edits this particular shot of the man on the train.
So don't you move. I like where you are, so don't pay any mind to me. I love it. Yeah, look at that. Manual focusing. Manual. Yeah.
And if you guys love the results that you're seeing on the screen, don't forget we also have a whole editing portion in the later half of this video.
Smoking on the subway. You never know what you're gonna see on the New York City subway. That's why I love the underground.
Chapter 4, Legalities of Street Photography.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good. Cause baby, I feel real good and I wish I would. It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good.
So, the question that we got asked the most from the first street video was surrounding the legalities of street photography. Is it okay to take photos of strangers, including minors, without their consent and publishing them on social media? Well, we actually called in an expert on this subject matter. He's a lawyer for social media content creators as well as a content creator himself. Ian Corzine. Ian, take it away.
Hey Jason, thanks so much for having me on. The answer to your question is yes, yes, yes. At least in America, it is totally legal for photographers to take pictures of strangers so long as they're in a public space. Actually, it is totally legal to take pictures of children without their permission or their parents' permission. Now, these photographers can use these photographs in social media, and they could make prints and then sell them and make money for themselves. They could even do what I would advise them to do, create NFTs out of these photos.
Hopefully we laid that question to rest. Now, while it is legal to take photos of strangers out in public, Professor Hines still advises to practice common sense.
I feel that you shouldn't do something that you wouldn't appreciate somebody doing to you.
He never publishes a bad photo of anyone, and he's never invasive of anyone's personal space. For the people that do find the images of themselves, the professor will actually send over the raw file and even give them a print. So if you recognize someone, or even yourself in his photos, be sure to reach out to him and let him know. You can find him on Instagram at Professor Hines. So the golden rule is don't be creepy about it, just be respectful. But if you have any further legal questions, be sure to check out Ian's channel.
Chapter 5, Lens Choices.
So now that we've seen the professor in action, let's shift gear and talk about his gear.
The gear that I'm using in terms of just for cameras is like this camera that I have here, which is the Sony Alpha 1. And I also use the Sony Alpha 9, but don't feel like you're missing out if you have an APS-C camera or any other crop body. If you want to go out and do street with those cameras, they are perfectly fine cameras to do so. You'll be surprised on just how good those cameras are when you put the right glass to it.
On a typical street session, the professor would bring around 2 to 3 lenses with him, at least one wide and one tight.
Right now for street on the manual side, I'm using the ZEISS Loxia 2.8 21mm. I have the Loxia f2 35. On the autofocus side, I have the Batis f2 25mm, the 40mm f2 close focus, the Batis 1.8 85, and then also the Sonar 1.8 55.
As we've seen throughout the video, most of the individual shots of people are photographed with a tighter lens, typically with a 55mm or an 85mm. And one of the things that we believe we've done in the previous video was that we inspired a lot of people to do street photography with an 85mm lens. It really challenges the conventional norm of street photography, where commenters would often say,
85 is not a street lens,
and that street photography
must be done with a 35mm and getting close to your subject. That's real street photography right there.
However, the professor does not believe in labeling lenses, nor does he like to do what everyone else is doing.
When you walk into a store like B&H, when you look at the box, doesn't matter who makes the lens. On that box, it says aperture, it has the focal length. Nowhere on that lens does it say landscape lens, wedding lens, portrait lens. People have given it these classifications just because. You know, an 85mm, people see it as a portrait lens. Why not try it for street? Why not try it for landscapes? If you see everybody using a particular lens for everything but this, and this, do that people aren't doing. That's how you get different photos from everybody else. You can utilize whatever lens you want to for any application.
The 85mm allows the professor to never be invasive of anyone's personal space. It allows him to stay at a comfortable distance, and not only that, but the 85mm provides a very unique look. It hones into the specific individual while using the environment around him as a beautiful backdrop. As to who he chooses to focus on, he looks out for interesting people, whether it's the action that they do, such as taking a photo with their phones, or their fashion choice, someone with an amazing outfit, or even colors that stick out, like a bright yellow cap. These are just some of the driving elements that he will focus on later when he edits his photos. On the other hand, wider lenses like the 21mm or the 35mm, while not exclusively, allows the professor to focus more on the environment. As we've seen from the train stations and this photo from Times Square, the people, the cars, and anything else become accessories to elevate the shots. And often in these wider shots, they're all just a blur. And don't forget, they are the ZEISS Batis and Loxia lenses. Hey, do me a favor, will ya? Give ZEISS some love. Check out their lenses for your specific camera system and follow them on social media and let them know that you enjoy this video and you want them to support more future projects like this. But really quickly, the Batis line of lenses are specifically designed for the Sony full-frame E-mount cameras, and these are a unique line of lenses that have autofocusing capabilities. On the other hand, the Loxia lenses are also designed for the Sony full-frame E-mount cameras, but the key difference from the Batis is that the Loxia lenses are manual focus only lenses. Despite being incredibly tiny lenses, they have a very responsive manual focus control. And actually, using the Loxia manual lenses is an artistic choice for the professor.
Chapter 6. Manual lenses.
The benefit to me for using a manual lens as opposed to autofocus is that it allows me to actually take my time. It makes me understand patience a little bit more, to where I'm not rushing through things. I'm taking the time to actually be a part of the scene, regaining my love for why I do this, my love for photography. And I feel that I am producing work that has, I guess, more of a story to it than before. There's a little bit more thought process behind it. It's just a way where I can really connect with where I am. I'm doing photography, but at the same time, I want to enjoy where I am.
When it comes to using manual lenses, here are a couple tips for you to help you nail focus. Use focus peaking and focus magnification. Focus peaking enables a clutter of dots on the screen that tells you what's in focus, and magnification enlarges a part of the screen that you want to concentrate the focus on.
Something that comes up often is that people ask, well, you could just take your autofocus lens and switch it to manual. That does not work the same.
Manual lenses, specifically the Loxia, have very fine linear response manual control, giving you the exact precisions needed to nail focus. Once you set the focus, you don't have to worry about the camera resetting it. Whereas autofocus lenses, most won't give you as fine of a control, as the focus is measured electronically with the camera. And oftentimes, the camera might reset the focus distance when it's powered off. When it comes to getting the shot, you want the least amount of obstacles getting in the way, and in this case, having the focus distance dialed in on the manual lenses would just allow you to focus on the moment.
So now I'm gonna switch from 85 back to 35, and this is what I'm gonna do now. So now with the 35, what I want sort of a long exposure in here. So with the 35, we're gonna change our aperture. So this is how I set up for a manual lens. So I'm gonna go to f8, maybe go to 9, let's go to 9. So now what I know is once I set my aperture, everything in between these notches, you see 8 on both sides. So that lets me know whatever distance fits within that window, as long as the subject is within that distance. So in this case, if it was a little bit between 2.5 feet to 4 feet, if someone's in that window, it's gonna be in focus at that aperture. As you go down, if you stop down in aperture, that window closes. So now it's more of a within a 3 feet margin. And so we're going to frame. So I might have to move a bit because I want where there are people. There's no one walking right now, so let's go up one. Okay. So we'll do a vertical. Set my focus there. Drop the ISO. And then boom, there you go. That's what we want. So that's how I differentiate the focal lengths. So if we zoom in on the back wall there, see how Moynihan's sharp back there? We want that. I just want the movement of the people. So that's how you get that. No tripod is necessary. So what you do is, say if you run into an instance where you do have some camera shake, just either adjust your ISO by increasing it so that way you can hand hold that. So like we're gonna get this. So see? Because my focus is set now, so I don't need to touch it. So, you know, I have it. I want Moynihan back there. Yeah. So see? So this is another example. See how there's a little motion in the text? So now I need to fix that. So all I do is, we'll increase about 2/3 of a stop. Here comes someone in view. Look at that. And that the text is perfect. Perfect text. So we were at 1/5 of a second, F9, ISO 200. So that's my sweet spot. So if I had a little motion, I know I have to go faster than that. That's my base. I cannot go lower than that because then I'll have where the sign back there is out of focus. And that's all you do. So once you have your focus set, it's just a matter of pointing and shooting. That's the difference of how I shoot a manual as opposed to an autofocus lens.
But that doesn't mean the professor has given up on autofocus lenses.
I'm gonna get between you.
They do have their time and place. Professor Hines, foreground. I'll put that as my lower third now. Okay, well, maybe not this time and place, but perhaps something a little more chaotic.
Chapter 7, Autofocus and the Chaos of Times Square.
Times Square, the belly of the beast. The kind of place that attracts only tourists from all walks of life. While most New Yorkers would avoid Times Square like a plague, we gravitate towards it.
Welcome to Times Square, the land of opportunity.
Remember how we said the professor's gold mine is a bustling crowd? Well, Times Square is the best spot to go dig it, because you never know what's going to happen.
So this is a corner that I've come to quite often. A lot of you have seen the shot that I took where it's a wide intersection shot like this. This is where this is done, and I don't use a tripod for it. Oh no.
Some of those shots I'm gonna forever remember because, you know, we almost got manhandled by Minnie Mouse, and things like that you don't see in the picture are why I remember certain moments leading up to an image, because that's important to that story for me.
Now this section is all about having anticipation. Be ready for the moment and always have your camera on.
So see, look at how good the tracking is. Very small margin of error there. We punch in. Look at how sharp that is. Look at that. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Look at that.
The autofocus settings that I use for my cameras is primarily flex spot or expand flexible spot. It's like a center focus point, but you can actually move it anywhere on the screen. When you're shooting with any lens, really, especially on the street, there's a lot of different elements going on. And so if you were to use a wider focus area, you might have something in focus that you did not want.
Get the yellow cab.
Now, the reason why I use the expand flex spot as well is because the regular flex spot, it's just pinpointed on one area. But expand sort of hunts around that small little focus area as well. So it kind of helps improve where the focus is landing so that way you can nail the shots.
So now we've lost the sun, which is perfect, because now it just gives us more opportunity to get any shot that I want. And I'll have my colors, so I'm happy about that. Let's see what we can see here. Look at that. Catching the expression. Isn't that awesome?
There is an instance in Times Square. There is a lady with her daughter on her back, and I just had to act quickly. But this is why I have a Peak Design strap on my wrist to tether my camera.
I had very short of a window to react to that. So that's how come I keep my camera on. I never turn it off for that very reason. So we still haven't moved yet. I'm just finding stuff that, you know, is catching my eye. Times Square has so many people. You can just literally walk a couple blocks and just stay in this vicinity and knock off shot after shot. Because you're gonna see a multitude of people, different backgrounds, different cultures. Oh, look at this, look at this. Look at this, a bride. Isn't that awesome? Look at that. Situations like this, I'll have my music going, and I'm just sitting here. I don't have anywhere to go. We're just, oh, look at her coming with the white. She's on her phone. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Got it. Punch in, look at that. Just beautiful. And so knock off a series there. That's perfect. Let's start walking a bit. I'm sure Jason would like to. At least I didn't have you kneeling this time, so give me the.
No, I got my thing. You see this, GoPro? He needs to kneel. I'm just gonna be down here like this.
Jason has just initiated the cheat code.
Despite the chaos in Times Square, it is important to note that the professor does not shoot in bursts. It's all a matter of timing. Of course, having a high-speed camera can certainly be advantageous, but any modern-day camera with autofocus, especially face and eye autofocus, will be good enough to capture the people in your frames.
I do not utilize burst, because the reason I don't do burst is because I don't want to have 50, 100 photos of the same thing and now I have to go through all of that. I actually feel happier when I just get one shot, because I'm going to appreciate that.
I may have a shot. It's not clean.
I just try to time it and take the shot.
Can you get into a better position? There's no time. Take the shot. I say take the shot. Take the bloody shot.
Whew! Wow, how are you guys enjoying this video so far? If you guys are loving it, be sure to share that love in the comment section down below, and don't forget to hit that like button. Now, throughout this video, we have shown you guys that street photography is a matter of finding your gold spot and focus on digging around that spot. At each section of the video, we stayed at that particular spot for at least 45 minutes to an hour. Here's the thing, when it comes to street photography, there is no time limit for the professor. He sets his own time limit. In fact, the professor on record have once said he stayed inside the Grand Central Terminal for over 4 hours just doing street photography. So let's see you top that. Our comment section is open down below.
Chapter 8. Rain.
Alright, so it wasn't that crazy of a rain, but we promised you guys we're gonna show you some cloudy, some murky, some moisty, rainy street photography. And the professor couldn't be any happier. This is his game now. We have entered his territory.
Today I'm happy about shooting because these are my conditions. So I'm excited. I feel more into it today. And that's a positive. How I feel really determines what the photos are gonna ultimately look like. Oh, yeah, that could be something creative though. Zoomed in, look at that. I like this corner. It's one of my favorites. Come up here. we'll go down this way.
We came back to the Fulton area so we can show you guys how the same location can be drastically different the next day, especially with the rain and the puddles. We were getting different types of shots with all kinds of different moods. Oh, it looks so good.
Baby, keep the light on for me, I'm coming home. Know I got you forever, wherever I go.
So we were out here yesterday. Notice the difference. Lighting.
You got me jumping through hoops. All the wishes in the world and I wish for you. I feel.
So I'm opting for the Batis 25. And now we're gonna get some reflections.
It's nice showing up so bright.
Even in these wet conditions, the professor will still get low to stake out for his shot.
Seeing colors that I've never seen.
And you already know it, we're busting our knees to maximize that reflection.
Look at that. Because we don't have the sunlight, I can now get slower. So what I want to do the next light, take the same reflection, but then I want to have a little bit of motion blur with the people crossing the street.
And remember when we said to always be ready for the moment?
Oh, that would have been good.
While that man running across would have made a great photo, the professor mentioned that he's okay with letting some shots go. Not every great moment has to be captured on camera. Some you just have to appreciate while you're there. But when your skills and luck coincide, you'll always end up with something quite magical.
So I was gonna slow the shutter, but I just kept it normal for that. Because I really wanted that lady with her colorful umbrella. That was nice. I like that.
Before we move on, I just want to quickly once again thank our friends over at ZEISS Camera Lenses Americas, Adobe, and Artlist for helping us, for supporting us, for sponsoring this video. It is through their generosity that allows us to make this long-form tutorial video for free on YouTube. What I tell you in the beginning, nothing held back, right? It's all for free. So if you guys appreciate the amount of work that went into it, the best thing that you can do for us is to simply like and comment down below. And if you guys want to go above and beyond, be sure to share this video to anyone who has an interest in photography, as well as the photo editing process. That would mean the world to us.
If I get lucky, someone's gonna come up the steps. So because of that, I've switched to zone focus so that way I can just hit on whoever comes up. I'm gonna be ready for it. Whenever that is. I knew it.
The moment you stood up.
It's not worth waiting. I'm over it.
Wow. It has been documented that the professor is Twitter.
Judge me or love me. 7 rings.
All the good vibes running through my mind. Positive feeling is on rewind. Baby, I feel all the good vibes running through my mind. See it, feeling alright.
Ooh, look at the steam.
Live it your life. See it, feeling alright. See it,
In situations like this, I like to capture cars coming down where people are across on the sidewalk at the intersection. The only way you can get that perfectly, you have to focus and then switch it to manual focus, because as the cars are coming by, you know, the camera is gonna be changing focus because your subject is hidden entirely. So you have to keep that in mind. So that's how come you have to switch between AF and manual focus. We might cross back over here. Just finding who I want. That's a good couple shot. Okay, let's review. Look at that. That's a good shot. Perfect. So we got him perfect. And look at that. Got the fog back there, got the cars. Ooh, I like that. Look at this. Look at that. Oh, this is so much action. Okay, so switch to manual. So I need to be further over. Let's see if I can quickly do it. Nope. So for those that say I don't make mistakes, I do make mistakes, you just don't see them. Now Jason Vong might make mistakes, but I don't make mistakes.
Jason Vong is never wrong.
That should be a t-shirt.
Yeah.
It's like, if it ain't ZEISS, it ain't nice.
So, with the wrap of the shoot, it is now time to edit.
Chapter 9, Lightroom.
We're cooking with grease, so pull out that Don King Chia Pet. It's time to get cooking, folks.
In this section of the video, you'll see a couple of full edits by Professor Hines from scratch. The professor will guide you through his editing process, what he focuses on, how colors drive his edits, as well as showing you some powerful tools in Lightroom to make your life a lot easier. And actually, you can even see the full editing to some of these curated photos in the Adobe Lightroom Discover tab. So if you're a subscriber to Adobe Lightroom right now, or sign up through a free trial, you can actually edit some of Professor Hines' photos. You'll have a chance to follow along or do your own edit as well, or even see the full edits from the professor himself or anyone else who choose to remix their own edit for the same photos. All of that is available in Adobe Lightroom right now through the Discover tab in the Remix section, so definitely go check that out.
Go and try some of the images that I have for yourself. Maybe you have an edit that I probably haven't thought about, but it's a great way to where you can really get involved in the community and share some of your creative processes with other people.
And this portion of the editing process is brought to you by Adobe. Thank you, Adobe, for your support. So without further ado, grab your computer, a nice refreshing drink, and let's get cozy with Kenny.
So let's get right into it with our first photo. Now this is one that I absolutely loved. We captured it on one of the older subway cars here in New York City. When I go to edit a photo, I always look for what are the dominating colors. It's pretty obvious here. You have orange, you have your red, and you have yellow. So that's where we're going to focus. Those three colors, red, yellow, and orange. Now let's open up our edit panel here. Now the first thing that I like to do is change my profile. I usually like starting with Adobe Standard, but we're gonna change this anyways because I actually want to use a color profile. Now, if you've never used the color profiles, what they are is basically like what you experience when using an Instagram filter. So let's go in here and browse our selection. Now there are various profiles available. We're going to use the Artistic 3. And once we select it, we can actually adjust how extensive that profile makes our photo as far as the adjustment, or we can actually take it back and kind of minimize the effect. For this, I actually want to go about the 70% range. Once we come out of that, we're going to start going through our panels here. Let's just start in order. With our light, our exposure is pretty spot on. In terms of our highlights though, I do want to make an adjustment here. I will typically decrease my highlights because what that will do is give me the detail back in certain areas that may appear as if they're overexposed, but really they're not. Look up here in the light area. You see a little bit here where we're seeing some of the detail that may have been lost here. And that just gives us that detail back so we can see some of those defining edges. To kind of get that brightness back, I'll use the white level. I also want to adjust a little bit in the shadows. When I do that, if I come up in shadows, typically I'll come down in blacks because I want to see the detail in the shadow areas, but I still want to have that nice contrast. That's a big signature to my actual style and work. So let's decrease that a little bit. We don't have to go too far. The next part is our point curve. I like to start off by dropping some anchors. Left to right, you have your black point, shadows, midtones, highlights, and then your white point. And I just like dropping these three anchors. So let's start that off here. Once we've done that, I want to bring up my black point. I'm just adding a little smidge. What this does is it sort of gives us that sort of faded look. If you go up really far, you see how that really changes the dynamics of the image. Makes it look like it's very faded, kind of washed out a bit. So let's come back down off of that because we don't want it to be too faded there. Now let's adjust our shadows, and we're going to bring this point over a little bit towards our black point. Get it about in there. Let's bring that down a bit. I'm okay with that. Next, let's adjust our midtones here. And then next, our highlights. They're actually pretty good. We don't have to do anything in our highlights, and we don't have to do anything in the white point. Now, once I've done that, we're going to come out of that from our point curve adjustment, select it to where you get back to your tone curve, and we're gonna make these adjustments here on our graph. Now I want to bring that to 15%, bring this to 60. That looks good. Let's go down to our color. Let's start manipulating a few things. Now, because I've already called out what colors are the dominating factor here, that's going to be my focus. We want to be adjusting those. Now for our color adjustment here, I don't think I want to really change anything. Everything looks pretty spot on. Now, if you wanted to pull out a little bit of the purple, you could. So now watch what happens if we did that. You see, we sort of take out that sort of purplish hue, and you get a little bit more of a warmer look to the overall color here because we took some of that purple out. So it just warmed it up a little bit. But in this case, I actually like the way that it was. So we're going to just reset that. Next, we're going to come down to our color mixer, and we're going to adjust those dominating colors. So let's start with our orange. I want to change my hue, and we'll just bring this over to our right a bit to where you're starting going towards the greenish yellow colors there. And we want to actually make this a little brighter, so we'll increase the luminance. And then we'll also go to our yellow color channel, and we'll go more towards the green spectrum here. And now we're really gonna pump up our luminance here. That's good. About 50%. Looks pretty good. I don't think there's anything I want to do with my red color channel. Let's maybe just do 15%. Now, once we've done that, we'll come down to my new favorite feature of Lightroom, which was the color grading. This has been such a great new addition to Lightroom. Split toning was already great, but color grading just gives you so much more control over what you can do. Now, what I want for this is we're going to do all of our adjustments. We're going to do shadows, midtones, highlights, and a global adjustment. So let's select our shadows here. And what I want is sort of a greenish hue in our shadows. So let's go to where that would be about 100, 110 or so. And now let's crank up the saturation for that. Look at that. Starting to get that green in those darker areas. And next we'll go to our midtones. And we want to have a warmer color tone for the midtones. So we'll go between 40 and 50%. Add the saturation. Boom, look at that. Highlights, we're going to just bump up the luminance here. We won't change any of the color tones, just adjust the luminance. And that looks pretty good. And then we'll go to our global. Now watch this. One thing you notice about the subway car, look at that aluminum that's on the background. It has no color to it right now. It's very metallic-like. But watch what happens. I want to really make this look like a rich vintage image. So that's why we're doing the global adjustment, and I'm going to use sort of a greenish color tint. Watch what happens when we do this. We'll go to about 120, around in that range. And let's add about 15, 20% in our saturation. Look at that. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. Totally changed the whole dynamics of the image by just using color grading. If you've not used it, you're really missing out on the color grading. Such a useful feature. The next thing we'll do is we'll do some effect adjustments. And you all know, I'm a fan of my vignettes. It just adds a nice little softness to it. Because right now, look at how bright the image is. You know, it's a very bright, busy photo. But we want to kind of calm that down a bit because, again, I want my focus to be this guy that's in the photo. Everything else at that point is sort of like an accessory. Like how Vivian is in the foreground, she's an accessory. The other people that are in the subway car, they're an accessory to that single guy that's in the photo. So we want to have a little bit of fall off for everything else and make sure the attention stays on him. So let's go ahead and add some vignetting here. We'll go to about 30%. We'll bring our midpoint all the way down. Now watch what happens with this. Look at how dark that got. Now to fix that, we're just gonna change the feathering. So it's on 50, let's bring it to 100. It opens up that vignette a bit. And then we'll bring up our adjustment for our highlights, because any regions where we have that vignette and our highlights are also being affected by our vignette, it'll actually eliminate that. So that way it puts the highlights back to sort of the brightness that it was. So let's bring those highlights back. Now, once we've done that, I'll come down and run a little sharpening. Don't necessarily have to. I mean, if we zoom in, look at how sharp the photo is. But it's just something that I always do. I say this all the time. I just do it because I just like doing it. Now, once we've done that, we'll come down to our optics, run our lens correction. We're going to select our lens here, which is a ZEISS E-mount. Now, what I typically do is I will run the lens correction just to correct any kind of distortion that there may be. But with lens vignetting correction, I actually will turn that back off because, again, I want the light fall off. Having vignetting for me is not a negative. You know, some of the lenses that I have may have a stronger vignette than others, and I'm okay with that because it's something that I typically will add to my photo anyway. So if the lens can do it for me, why not just keep it? So in that case, we're gonna keep it. Now, I don't think we have to straighten this, but let's see if there's any adjustment we need to do with the geometry here. So we'll select auto, and as you can see, it needed to be a little straightened. That worked well. Now, finally, we're going to come into my other favorite, which is the masking, because we want our subject, this guy, to stand out a little bit more. So what I want to do is do select subject. Now let's see if the program will actually select him. Sometimes it works, sometimes it may not. And so in this case it did, but it also caught this sort of couple that's over here on the left, and we don't want to adjust them. So then in that case, what do we do? Well, you just come right on in, click on this subtract, and we're just going to do a brush adjustment here. Now let's change the size. This can be significantly larger. And we're just going to subtract our mask away from them. Once we've done that, let's make our adjustments. I want to increase the shadows a bit, and then I want to increase my white level. Boom, that's it. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I think we have a final image there, folks. That looks very, very good. So look at where we started. The original wasn't bad. I say this all the time. Editing for me is not about fixing an image. It's about adding my unique creative style. But as you can see, Lightroom is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool to where you can really change the whole dynamics of your photo. Now our second image is one that was, this was one of the cutest photos. And I was in the middle of talking into the camera with Jason in Times Square, and we were getting ready to finish up and start moving along. And I turned around and I saw this lady with her daughter on her back, and I thought it was the cutest photo ever. Thank goodness I had my camera set up to where all I had to do was hold the camera up and take the photo. This was a cute, adorable photo that I was happy that I captured. What I'm gonna do with this one is, I like what we have. I mean, no edits yet. In the picture, it looks perfectly fine. But we're just gonna emphasize a few things. That's all we're doing. We're gonna emphasize a few things. Now, the first thing that I want to do is, I don't wanna change the profile. We're already in Adobe Standard. I think that looks good. I wanna start with a more flatter look. That's why I'm using the Adobe Standard. The default is the Adobe Color. I'll go in here and show you what that would look like. Has a little bit more contrast to it, but for any contrast that I add, I'm gonna bring that in later on. So let's just start with the flatter profile with the Adobe Standard. Now, first thing I want to do is bring down those highlights. Just bring it down about 20 or so %. We want to increase our shadows, go about 40 or so % on that. And then also bring up our white level. Now, because we brought up those shadows, we're gonna bring down the black level. So it's always an inverse effect. Highlights came down, whites went up, shadows went up, black levels came down. For our tone curve this time, we're actually going to use a preset. Come back to our top, select preset, and this preset is strictly adjusting our tone curve. Look at what the difference is and when we have that. Here's without, here it is with. Just wait, it's all gonna come together, I promise you that. Once we have that, we're going to close our presets and we're just gonna keep it moving. There's nothing else that I need to do in my tone curve adjustment. You know, our tint that we have, vibrance, all of that is spot on. There's nothing that I need to change here either. we're going to come to our color mixer. Now, there's a lot of color elements here. You have some red, you got yellow, you have like magenta, a little bit of green and aqua. We got a multitude of colors going on. So let's start with the red. Luminance, let's bring it up. We're going to add a little bit of adjustment, go a little bit more warmer in our orange color channel. We're going to drop the saturation though. Next, we'll do yellow, and we want to go more orange in the yellow. So we're going to significantly change this to about 50% or so. After that, we're going to come over to our aqua channel, and we're going to go a little bit more towards the blue side, and then we'll increase the luminance here. And then for our blue, go a little bit more on the purple side. Now drop the saturation here, maybe about 50 or so %, and increase the luminance. Now, color grading. And for this, we're gonna be adjusting everything. Our shadows, our midtones, highlights, our global. Now, you don't always have to do this, but I just love it. Now, with our shadows, we want to just add a smidge of red, just a smidge. So increase the saturation. We don't have to change our hue. It's already where we want it, but we just want to add a little bit. Now watch what happens if I add quite a bit of saturation. You see how it sort of adds this sort of, I guess, maroon type color tone to the entire image? You kind of have the standout colors being your purple, sort of magenta colors. So I want to add that because it sort of complements that. Again, I'm looking at what colors stand out to me. In this case, because of our subjects, those sort of tones stand out to me. We want to exaggerate those. Now let's bring that down and just keep a little smidge. That's it. Next, we'll come to our midtones. And I want sort of like a greenish, bluish type color hue here. Add a little bit of saturation. Okay, and then we'll also increase our luminance, about 40%. That looks good. Next, we'll do our highlights. And we want to do a little bit in the warm color tones here. And let's add our saturation. Okay, that looks good. Bring up the luminance. That's good. Lastly, global. Again, we'll do a little bit of a warm touch here in the 40-50 range. Add just a little smidge of saturation. And then we'll also bring up luminance here as well. All right. Now, again, we're going to add a vignette. We're always going to add a vignette. With that, let's bring in about 30 or so. I think that works really well. For our midpoint, we're going to take that all the way to 0. Now for some of these adjustments here, let's add a little bit of texture and clarity too. Make sure you don't go too far because you don't want it looking too grungy on someone's face. And so we're just going to add just a little bit. And then we'll also adjust our roundness, feather, and highlight of our vignette. So let's take a roundness to 100, open up the vignette by changing the feather to 100, and then bring in our highlight adjustment there. Next, for our detail, just add in a little sharpness. I just love it. And then we'll run our lens correction again. We had the ZEISS 85 here. It's selected there. And remember what I said with the last photo. I love the vignetting, so we're going to take the correction off for that. I just love having that. We might have a little bit on there. Let's only go to about 10%. And once we've done that, let's go into masking. And I just want to go a little bit warmer on our subjects here because the color is a smidge kind of washed out. So let's just do a select subject with our masking. Let the program do its thing. It's gonna select our people here. There we go. And we're going to change our temperature. And let's just go to the warmer side. Look at that. And it's okay if, if we just wanted to do their faces, we could, but it doesn't matter if I have the entire body selected. It's okay here. We'll come out of that and there we go. I think that's a pretty photo, right? There's our before, there is our after. Just being creative, that's all it is.
Tell me that I'm all you want.
Now our last image here, we've already gone through all of the bulk of our adjustments except one thing, and that's color grading, because I want you to really see just how powerful this one tool is on its own. Now, to show you what the unedited look like, there's the before, no edits done. That's with our adjustments with the exception of color grading. I saw this photo when it was our first day of filming and we were just out kind of testing things out. Gorgeous golden sunset. Oh, it was just beautiful. And I saw this woman who was running who had the longest ponytail, reminded me of Ariana Grande. You know, that's where my camera over here got its name, Ariana. And she was running, and so I came running because I knew where I wanted to be to catch the framing. And there were these railings, and you had all these light posts in a line. And I just knew that she was going to run along that path close to the bars. And so I got in position because I wanted to get as close as I could to get that railing. So that way it's kind of like it's leading the viewer into where my subject is. So even though she's out in the distance, as you follow that line, you'll see where she is in that image. And I just love this photo. So because of the great sunset that it was, boom, that's my initial thought. We need to focus on the colors that is around a sunset. What is that? Red, orange, and yellow. That is it. Let's open up our edit adjustment panel again, and let's go straight to color grading. Shadows, midtones, highlights, global. It's a little addictive, as you can see. Kind of go a little overboard with the color grading, but it's so fun. Now, what we want to do here, add the warmness. That's where we're going. So we're in the 30-40% range. Add a little saturation. We're going to bring down our luminance here. And that sort of kind of gives me a little bit of contrast back. Next, we're going to do our midtones. Again, go into the warmer region. Now we're gonna increase the saturation here a lot. Watch what happens with this. You see how we're starting to get those midtones? You're starting to see this image warming up, right? Now let's bring up that luminance too. We really want this image to be kind of punchy. Next, we'll go into our highlights. Again, same region for our hue. Saturation, let's bump that up about 30 or so percent. And then next, we'll have our global. Now watch what happens when I adjust for the global. Let's set our hue, and then we're gonna bring up the saturation a lot here. Look at that. Nice, beautiful golden photo. Once we've done that, let's come back over to our sort of three-sided view where we see all of our shadows, midtones, and highlights. And I want to change my balance a bit so that way it's not as intense of all of our adjustments. And then we have a final image. So here's our before, and look at the colors. You see the gold was standing out. The buildings have a few shades of colors on there, but they're not really that saturated. So that's you don't have to worry about it. But look at that after. Rich, golden goodness. Unfortunately, we've come to the conclusion of our editing. But if you want to learn more, you can always find me online at professorheinz.com. Or you can visit my YouTube channel that has even more tutorials available at Professor Heinz's Choice. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Before you guys go, if you guys enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to let ZEISS and Adobe know so we can make more of these tutorials in the future. And don't forget to tag us on Instagram
at Professor Heinz,
at Jason V Media, all your future street photos. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
The ultimate guide to street photography.
I think we covered a lot of stuff.
I think we covered a lot.
All right, and we're gonna cut that.